Hey, it's Ray Carroll. It's Sober Without God. And I'm going to do something a little new today. And I'm going to try to do on Saturdays some book reviews. I love reading. And one of the things I'm reading right now are the Stuart Woods series of books. And they're about a character named Stone Barrington. And I cannot get enough of it. Now, Stuart Woods died in 2022, and I think he wrote 65 of these Stone Barrington novels. Now, Stone Barrington is the main character in the book, and he's kind of a odd character. And I don't mean odd in a bad way, but he's a devil may care, retired cop, current lawyer, gets his own way. He is definitely a womanizer. I'll let him describe himself. He's in this book. This is book number 3, and I'm not going to review this book today, but I wanted to start with Stone Barrington Saturday 1, which hopefully will become book review Saturday. But I wanted to start with just a description of the character to give you an idea of who he is before I start reviewing Stone Barrington books. But I'll let him describe himself. He is describing himself to another character in this novel, Dead in the Water. And he says, I'm a very bad boy. Oh, he said, a very bad boy put a 22 slug in my knee, and the force quit me. The New York Police Department quit me, gave me their very best pension. That's the short version. I won't bore you with the long one, which involves a lot of department politics and a very cramped, very strange case I worked on. Anyway, once off the force, I crammed for the bar, and an old law school buddy hooked me up to work with a law firm. So that's Stone Barrington. And he's handsome. He can basically walk anywhere, go into any place, and an attractive woman will immediately be right on top of him, and he will have sex with that woman. Absolutely every time. He's like the James Bond of the retired police officer lawyer world. He has a beautiful home in New York, and I believe in the countryside. It's hard to tell. He also has, I think, an apartment there. It's hard, but his life reflects Stuart Woods' life. And the real estate that Stuart Woods owns, he owns. He owns a plane. He flies a plane like Stuart Woods flew. Here's a picture of the author. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it kind of well. It feels like a personalization, like of who Stuart Woods kind of wanted to be. It's like a hyper version of the author and what he in the dream world, fantasy world, what he kind of wanted to be. The first Stone Barrington novel was written in 91 and built this author an absolute kingdom to live in. And he had real estate all over the world. Good for him. Fantastic for him. The books are written in a kind of a saucy language. I'm not sure that an American male at my age was the intended audience, but I can't put them down. I mean, they're not too racy, but they're kind of trashy. but the plots are pretty good. It's not. I've been reading a lot of self-help books lately, and that's how I kind of got into it. I was reading some really heavy self-help stuff, and I was like, man, I need something light. So I just went to the library, picked up a book, and I was like, this looks light. I can read it. And I got hooked. So I picked up one that was in the middle of the series, which I'll talk about later. And I do want to say about the character, and that's who fascinates me most, the Stone Barrington character. He fascinates me, and he makes me so interested because he has no moral compass. Now, I would say my moral compass doesn't point north. It probably points northeast. Like if you were to go with me and we were like, we had to get to Canada, we would get to Canada. I mean, we might not end up exactly where we needed to get in Canada, but we would get to Canada. Stone Barrington, if you had to get to Canada on his moral compass, you would end up on Neptune. That's just who the guy is. In this book, this is not a spoiler. of a book written back in 93 or 94 or 97 or whatever it was. But he ends up in the first 13 chapters. He's got a girlfriend back in New York, and he ends up going down to the islands, the Canary Islands, pulling up his yacht next to the yacht of a woman who her husband has just died, like within the last few days. And he ends up sleeping with this lady. And just within days of the death of her husband. And he's talking about it in chapter 13. And he says, he wakes up the next morning and he says, for himself, he had been disappointed, angry, jealous, drunk, and oh yes, horny. She was a client, of course, but he was a long way from the ethics committee of the New York State Bar Association, and he had never been any good at saying no to women. Oh, that's one way to describe it. Absolute womanizer. Well, he goes through the book like that, and he's still got a girl back in New York that he was with in the previous book, and they'd had a big long relationship and wonderfully described, and it grew. And at the beginning of this book, he's talking about possibly marrying her on this trip, on the boat trip, and they're going to get together, and at the end of the boat trip, everything goes okay. They're going to get married. And of course, that's not going to happen because it's a new book, and Stone Barrington's got to have himself a new woman. And the girl back in New York ends up breaking up with him via fax. Fax. That tells you how dated this is. I've never been broken up via fax, thankfully. But he gets the fax from the girl in New York who tells him she's found another man. And after he gets the fax, he says, he reads it and he says he didn't like the sound of that in the least, but he was suddenly very glad he'd Allison Manning, the widow, he would do it again every chance he had for as long as he could. So anyway, Stone Barrington, interesting character, great character. I don't know. In the previous book, which I'm sure I'll bring up when I review that book, he's going along. He's got a relationship with a lady, and they're building this relationship. And in the middle of that book, he goes and has sex with some random character right in the middle of that relationship. So again, I'm sure I wasn't the target audience. It's not, I wouldn't say it's smut, but it's right there. So maybe we'll have some Stone Barrington Saturdays. I'm reading these books pretty quickly, and they're entertaining. Stuart Woods did a good job, at least being entertaining. My usual reading, as you can see over my shoulder, is Stephen King. Got a Stephen King Funko there too. I love reading some Stephen King. I love reading some self-help books as well. So maybe it'll turn into some book club Saturdays. But I hope you enjoyed it. Good introduction to the character. So we'll see where it goes from here. Thanks for tuning in.